Ready to go?
At Metro Transit, we are. With more routes to more places, easy ways to pay, and more convenient options, we're ready to go further. Go easier. Go faster. Go, go, go.
And go.
We're ready to go. Are you?
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity, designed for more than just therapists. If you're a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve, and it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. To date, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself, and if you're encouraged by it as well, share it with a friend. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on how Juneteenth is still relevant today. So, as busy days fly by and Memorial Day still feels like it was just yesterday, June is now here and another commemorative holiday will soon be upon us, namely Juneteenth. As new as the holiday still feels for many, we must remember that this is a holiday that's been celebrated for over 150 years, following the announcement of freedom for enslaved people in Galveston, Texas. The short summary of the reason for the holiday is, in the first place, is that while the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863, news of it and the resulting end of slavery didn't reach everyone at the same time. As the news traveled further and further south, the last to receive the news were in Texas on June 19th, 1865. Hence, the annual celebration, Juneteenth, being celebrated somewhere in the U.S. ever since. Although Juneteenth became a federal holiday only recently in 2021, intentional efforts have been made to utilize Juneteenth not only to remember the struggle of slavery that our ancestors endured, but also to be inspired by the fire of resilience and hope that was never put out. Now, just as many are merely continuing to celebrate something they have already celebrated for generations, many more are new to the holiday and its significance. In light of this, it's worth acknowledging the reasonable uncertainty that can arise with people from a variety of racial and ethnic backgrounds who are struggling with what significance the holiday will have for them beyond a federally supported day off of work. Some even go so far as to ask, I don't mind getting an extra day off work, but why are we supporting made up holidays based on things that happened 150 years ago? Now, the easy, short response to this is to remind people that this is a very premise behind America's celebration of the 4th of July. Although not the same, and sure it's a fun holiday to spend time with family and friends, its motivating origin is similarly a celebration of a nation's Declaration of Independence, in this case from Great Britain in 1776, almost 250 years ago. But the slightly more elaborate answer as to why it's important to celebrate Juneteenth is because despite what happened 150 years ago, and while not a lot, or while a lot has admittedly changed, there are some similarly detrimental realities which remain, such that alongside of distancing ourselves from the injustices of the past, we have an ongoing challenge to not only grow beyond, but also to cease perpetuating injustices today. For the sake of time, I'll illustrate the not just historical, but also present significance of Juneteenth by highlighting the fact that although the Emancipation Proclamation granted freedom to enslaved people across the nation, intentionally manipulated ignorance and misinformation were also used as a tool to keep legally freed people from realizing and living out their freedom because they were prevented from access to the information they needed to change the reality. Does that sound familiar? You have likely heard many times over the Tuskegee syphilis study, where the U.S. Public Health Service misled 500 African American men, making them believe they were receiving free health care, only to discover that they were being experimented on, even after penicillin became a standard cure. Even more so, until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, in many southern states, African Americans who were denied formal education were then denied voting rights because they couldn't pass literacy tests that they had made up. In other words, you need the information to succeed, but we're going to deny you the information and then blame you for not succeeding, which sounds similar to redlining and housing discrimination practices, where African Americans were denied the home loans that helped many other Americans build generational wealth, only to later be judged for the low economic quality of their cultural minority neighborhoods. Don't forget the GI Bill, which offered education and housing benefits to World War II veterans, but Black veterans were administratively given the runaround when they tried to obtain those same earned benefits. And since education often contributes to earnings, we have yet another historical experience of resources and the knowledge of how to gain those resources being withheld with detrimental consequences for African Americans. Not just way back then, but for years to follow and even to now. On any given day, you might hear African Americans expressing caution about going to hospitals or pursuing financial loans or other types of support, or cautions regarding whether the legal system is something they can just trust. This is often because, just as with each of these historical examples, there are also more recent examples, with new ones being uncovered regularly, where there seem to be efforts to keep certain information away from cultural minorities, especially African Americans in this country, who little by little are expressing outrage when they are fined large sums of money that they don't have, only to find out that there were financial loopholes that they could have had access to that other people knew about, but it wasn't shared with them, or being told that if they had the money to avoid or to afford the legal or financial expert, then they might have gained that access. But generational wealth challenges that started many years ago limited that leverage to receive that kind of support because it was withheld before. This includes things like academic tutoring for standardized tests that will be used as gatekeeping for academic institutions, or financial empowerment resources, legal resources, housing resources, and many more. Now, the common defensive response to this is often an attempt to blame cultural minorities for wanting handouts or wanting everything handed to them without having to work. Unfortunately, if you'd actually listen to people's stories, you'd hear the significant willingness to do the work, as well as a genuine lack of knowledge regarding what work it is they need to do. Or simply put, they don't know what they don't know. But if they did, watch out. And that's where many have thankfully sought to make intentional efforts to resolve this information gap and reduce the likelihood of ignorance continuing to be a barrier like it has been before. As I mentioned in a recent podcast, this is one of the reasons why Black media remains relevant today. For if mainstream media sources plan to focus more on informing the majority of the things most relevant to enhancing their lives, such that if anyone else benefits them, then it'd be a happy accident, then culture specific media sources can be seen as taking the responsibility for providing information that is conveniently left out of mainstream media platforms. Similarly, entrepreneurial and nonprofit efforts are happening around the country, hoping that an abundance of small efforts will have a big impact as they seek to provide those in the African American community, as well as other minority communities, with information that has historically been denied them. The fact that these efforts continue to be needed to this day highlights the reality that celebrations like that of Juneteenth are not just opportunities to remember the struggles that happened years ago, but they're also opportunities to remember the historical efforts to live out that victory, as well as to continue those efforts until they are no longer needed. Unfortunately, despite the significant progress that has admittedly been made over the years, the need to inform intentional and unintentional ignorance in order to open doors that should never have been closed remains relevant. With all this in mind, my hope for you is that you will not just see Juneteenth as a new day off of work, nor as some made up holiday to appease complaining minorities, but instead, similar to 4th of July, just see Juneteenth as an opportunity to remember what happened years ago. Appreciate the impact of that historical event on the freedoms we have today, while also acknowledging that despite what happened years ago, ongoing informational access efforts are still needed to help people more completely live out their freedom. It is often said, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. So let's learn our history and learn to see that in many ways, we're still repeating that history and that we'll continue to do so in nuanced ways until we're willing to be increasingly informed and act upon what we learned, not just for the betterment of some, but for the betterment of us all. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to the Diversity Dude podcast. If you have any pressing diversity related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame free or empowering guest speaker or training on this often sensitive topic, then feel free to send me a message at diversity.madesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who can benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged by it as well, or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you and that you share it with someone else so that they can be inspired as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
When I was introduced to Bremer, I really appreciated it. It was more of a relationship. The support that we have in project-based lending, it's emboldening us to go after larger projects. That is a game changer for a small business. The resources and the support from Bremer Bank is exciting that I could stay with them forever. Sometimes when you're working with bankers, they relish the fact of saying no. With Bremer, it's like they're finding a way to say yes.
What's up, everyone? It's Shaletta. I'm here getting a phone for one of my newly minted teenagers with Xfinity Mobile. They've got great options, affordable plans, and solid coverage that works for our whole family. With Xfinity Mobile, my daughter can stay connected with me wherever she goes. And did you know when you sign up, you can get an extra phone line free for a full year? Switch to Xfinity Mobile today for more savings, more smiles, and more ways to stay connected.